Uh, Andrew, it's great to have you. Thank you all for joining us. I'm Fadi Boulos, the founder of Supportful, a software engineering consulting company. We're on a mission to reduce the brain drain in Lebanon by working with global tech startups. We provide them with remote engineers who work from their home office in their hometown for them to be able to stay and thrive in their local environment while being part of international teams. Andrew is the head of DevOps Evangelism at Atlassian. He's a worldwide leader about DevOps, DevEx, engineering teams, and engineering culture. Andrew, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Fadi. Good to be talking to you.
So, if you have any questions, please do drop them in the chat, and we'll make sure to ask them either on the go or at the end in the Q&A session. Sorry. So, Andrew, let's start with the last thing, the last achievement you did, which was running a meetingless project in across 4 time zones and for 20 different people. Congrats. Tell us more about it.
Thanks. Yeah, like you said, it was a big project, and at the time I was having a challenge with actually starting the project. I live in Sydney. We had people in North America and in Europe all that we needed to work on the same project, and there was no way we could actually schedule a meeting and all of us be together in a time which is within our work hours. At the time, there were a lot of moving parts. I was the moving part. I travel a lot as a part of my role. So I was at that time traveling between Sydney, where I live, to make a trip to Copenhagen in Europe. And I was also going to North America. And so I was procrastinating a little bit. There was no way where I felt like I could have a meeting and get everyone on the same page. So I did what I normally do. I wrote out a Confluence page as a project kickoff. I explained what we were doing, why we were going to do it, and shared that. I recorded a Loom. So there's a cool product called Loom that we use internally, and it basically records a video over a Confluence page, and you can use that to explain with a little bit more context some of the things that you're trying to communicate. So we ran this project. It was successful. We delivered it all on time and within all the limits that we had. And we didn't have a single meeting, which was fantastic. Everybody worked within their own time zones, and we got what we needed to get done. We got it all done.
Great. Well, this is async work at its finest, so I like it. Andrew, before you joined Atlassian, you were on the other, I don't want to say the other side of the industry, but in a in a sector which is often disrupted by startups. And you joined which is banking, and you joined one of the most agile organizations. So tell us more about your journey from this side to the other side.
So I was an executive manager at the Commonwealth Bank of Australia. In case you don't know about CBA, it's Australia's largest bank. It's got a excellent online banking platform, one of the best in the world, I'd say. I'm still a customer of Commonwealth Bank now. So even though it's a bank, there's a huge focus on technology there. Technology is at the core of a lot of what the Commonwealth Bank does. While I was there, I led a large platform team. What I liked about working at CBA was the scale at which everything's done. So I led a platform team. We supported 7,000 engineers in the company. Some of our products that we had between 20 and 25,000 users. We had a huge focus on technology, and I learned so much while I was there. So I did make the transition from CBA to Atlassian. And the first thing that hit me when I joined Atlassian was how different the culture was. The Atlassian values are everywhere. People talk about them all the time. They're referenced all the time. They're on the walls in the office. And they're great values. They are play as a team, open company, no bullshit, don't F the customer, and build with heart and balance. And they're just such great values, and people live them every day. And it's clear as day. Whenever you speak with an Atlassian, you just see these values coming through. So really, when I joined Atlassian, the culture was a great part of that. And It's really, I think, what sets the company apart. We have happy teammates and they do awesome things for our customers. I talked about the scale at CBA before. If you consider the scale I work at now, I have the opportunity to help Atlassian's 300,000 customers unleash the potential of their teams through our products. Generally, I work with CIOs and CTOs across the world, basically on strategies to improve developer experience and create a happy and productive workforce. So the skills I use between the two companies are actually quite similar. I just apply them differently, but it is a very different type of company to work in.
Yeah, and speaking of the work you do at Atlassian with your customers, as an evangelist role, is it more within Atlassian? Is it more with their customers? Is it promoting the DevOps mindset?
It's everything, everywhere, all at once, basically. So there's two parts of my role. Externally, I do things like this. I do podcasts. I do a lot of public speaking. I write articles. I work with, like I mentioned, a lot of our Fortune 500 customers on strategies and things that they're trying to do. Internally, I work closely with our marketing team, our product team, and engineering on building products that our customers want. So I understand what our customers are after and what the industry is looking for, and I help our product teams build those things.
Okay. Um, Speaking of DevOps, and everything and everyone, do you see a very large trend currently in the world of DevOps and software engineering? I mean, besides AI, we're going to speak about AI, but as a DevOps guru, uh, anything that you feel is picking up these days?
Yeah, I think like platform engineering is a key trend. Obviously, I said I led a platform team earlier. I have a strong belief that when platform teams and platform engineering is done right, it's really the way to achieve true success with DevOps. Um, if you think about DevOps and the tooling side of it, and everything that developers have to face now, when we're talking about hundreds of tools that they're using. They need to know about cloud and AI and machine learning, and they're responsible for development and operations of their software that they build. There's a lot there for devs to know and to do as a part of their daily role, and they can't do everything. And so I see platform teams being critical to the success of the modern day developer, where they shouldn't have to worry about what tools are they using, which pipelines should I have, how do I provision infrastructure. They shouldn't need to have to go into detail of understanding all of the cloud infrastructure and where everything is and how it all works. Platform teams are a way to abstract some of that complexity from developers so they can focus on the core part of their role, which is delivering high quality software to production.
Which leads us a bit to the concept of developer experience. So, making these platforms to make developers' lives easier. And DevEx, what is it? In layman terms, let us understand it for once and for all.
All right, so I'm going to talk about the definition of developer experience and the art. So if you think about the definition, developer experience is how engineers think and feel about the tools and the frameworks and the processes that they use to build software within a specific company. So that's like the definition of developer experience. The art is around improving developer experience. And improving developer experience is about identifying points of friction that developers face in their daily work and systematically improving those points of friction for them. So, for example, a point of friction that an engineering organization might encounter is long build times. And it's a pretty common one. A lot of engineers that I talk to tell me about the struggles that they face in their companies around build times. So if you're a developer experience team or a platform team and you know that this is a point of friction for developers, you can improve their experience by reducing build times so that it's no longer a point of friction for developers.
Okay. It could be also let's say, the lack of documentation. And in that
Yeah,
case,
that's another common one.
yeah, but the outcome of your work is a bit overarching, I would say, because it will touch on many stakeholders within the organization, and which leads me to the question about the concept of DevEx in startups versus large enterprises. Is it valid in smaller companies, or is it more of a concept that you only see and you only work on in bigger enterprises?
I think it applies in every company. It's probably a bigger problem for enterprises because of how many developers they have. Like if you think of a startup with 5 developers, having 5 developers with not using good tools and facing a lot of friction in their day-to-day work is still a problem for a startup. But it's not the same, obviously, as when you have 10,000 developers who are facing that same amount of friction. So I think it's a thing for all companies, and it's important for all companies. But obviously, the problem gets bigger the bigger the company gets.
Okay, and is the concept of DevX something that there was an aha moment? Yeah, I found it, or is it like accumulation of smaller events and your throughout your experience that led you to say, okay, this is something that we need to tackle?
For me personally, it was there was not an aha moment. It was over a period of time, maybe like 10 years ago or so. Like I said, I was working in a platform team. Back then, it wasn't core developer experience, but we just had a strong focus on treating our developers as customers. So they were our internal customers, and we could see the points of friction that they were facing. Like there was a lot of processes, there was a lot of disconnected tooling that they had to deal with. There was a lot of manual stuff that they had to go through just to do their job. So we went on a process of identifying their friction points and improving them. Obviously, that was a journey, and as things evolved in the industry, developer experience came more of a focus. So we didn't call it developer experience back then, but it's what
Mm.
it ended up being called.
And so, what makes a good developer experience? What makes a good, and healthy engineering team culture? And does remote work has any impact at all in all of this?
Yeah, so like I'll focus on engineering culture as opposed to just a good culture in general. In my experience, healthy engineering culture is one that promotes continuous learning and continuous improvement, because really that's the foundation of experimentation and innovation. So if you think about it, to continuously learn, it means that you must be experimenting and learning from those experiments. So whether they're failures or successes, you're learning, and obviously to do that, a company needs or a team needs to feel strong psychological safety, and they must be able to feel like they can fail safely and be able to learn from that. And then continuous improvement obviously is, to me, that engineers also feel safe in a way that they can reflect on how they're doing. They don't have to say everything is perfect all the time. They take a good look at how we're performing, what are some things that we could do better, and how can we improve. And then they plan on those improvements together. So yeah, to answer your question, to me, there's 2 parts of it. There's continuous learning um, and experimentation and innovation.
And when you say continuous learning, it means, the learning should be documented somewhere, right? And this effort of documentation is not something engineers are usually fond of. But at the same time, they want more documentation, but they don't feel like producing such documentation. So how do you balance this? How does it? Is it like 80% of your work should be coding and 20% documentation, or how do you go about it?
Um, I've been leading engineers for 20 years, and I can tell you the number one complaint is about writing documentation, like you said. The number two complaint is when there's no documentation and they need it. So I feel like there isn't a winning answer here. There's no perfect thing. Um, I wouldn't specify a percentage of time. When it comes to learning, if we talk about documentation through learning, learning happens on many levels. If we're talking about as a team, it doesn't always have to be documented. Sometimes a discussion is enough, like when you're having like a retrospective or something like that. Sometimes just discussing, how are we going, where can we improve, is enough for the team. There are times when learning should be documented, but I'm not like a rigid documentation person. Like there needs to be documentation, it needs to be the right amount, but I don't like it when there's obviously too much time documenting things for the sake of documentation. That's for sure.
Yeah. Do you see an opportunity for using AI here?
Of
Like
course.
take this load off my back and just do it?
Yeah, I mean, documentation is the perfect use case for AI because nobody wants to do it really, but everybody needs it.
Yeah.
AI is pretty good at it. So um, I think like when we're talking about developer experience and AI, which I think we'll talk about a little bit later, but um, that to me is a really good use case for AI.
Yeah, we can also tackle it right now. How do you see the role of AI in DevEx? Even more generally, how do you see the role of AI in engineers' day-to-day life in the coming years, and specifically, how will it impact DevEx?
Yeah, I mean, what I'm seeing now with a lot of companies that I speak to is they're investing heavily in AI for their engineers, which is good. But a lot of that investment is going into different types of coding assistance, and that's a problem. So, um, and the problem is, coding is not a source of friction for developers. That's a part of the job that they like.
Mm.
And when you look at, a lot of industry stats around how much time engineers spend in coding, it's only like 30% of their time is the industry average. And no developer complains about that. They complain about the other 70%. They complain about meetings and writing documentation and all these other things that they need to deal with. And so to me, when you're thinking about AI, well, let's talk about developer experience. The process to improve developer experience is to identify friction that developers are facing, baseline it, measure that friction, and then systematically work to improve it over time. When you think about using AI for coding, developers don't experience any friction there. So it's not going to improve their developer experience. It might enhance it. It might take some of the toil out of that part of the process, but it's not going to improve all the other problems that were there before. And so when you look at the 70% and what's in there, that to me is where we should be applying AI. I'll give you like a really quick example, a couple of quick examples. Um, so I don't know about you, but I used to work in a service management team. And I think a lot of people have been in that situation where you're sitting down, you're having a good day, and then your phone just starts vibrating, you're getting alerts, and you know something has gone wrong. And then when you look at the alerts, there's like 80 different alerts, and you don't know what it is. You just know something's blown up. And then you waste time trying to find, okay, what's the problem? What do all these alerts relate to? What do I actually need to do to solve a problem? And so that's a really good use case for AI. So one thing that Atlassian has built into one of our products, Jira Service Management, is AI alert grouping. So using AI and machine learning, we're able to group all of the alerts to a related event, and present it in a grouped way to the person who's looking at it. What it can also do is tell you um, when did this happen before, who worked on it, who fixed it, and what did they do to fix it. And now, when you think about how much that will speed up a developer's time when in a DevOps world, when they get all these alerts, like that's solving a real strong pain point for them. There's millions of these. Another one might be this. People have this idea that engineers like fixing tech debt, and it's not that they like it. I talk to a lot of product managers. They're like, oh, engineers, they always just want to fix tech debt. They don't want to fix it. It's like saying people like paying interest on their loans and they want to pay the bank back. That's not really true. They have to do that. Engineers also want to build new features, but they have to fix the tech debt because it drives them nuts. It slows them down, gets in their way. And so to solve that, something else that we built internally is something that we use AI for in terms of resolving tech debt. So what it does is it'll scan a source code repo. It'll find things like stale feature flags that nobody wants to spend time going and removing. It'll find them. It'll say to the developer, hey, you've got all these stale feature flags. Do you want to raise a Jira ticket to remove these, or do you want me to fix it for you? And so the person can choose, yep, go and remove the feature flags, or no, put it in the backlog and I'll do it later. And again, it's working to resolve a key pain point for developers.
Yeah. You said that AI should be used mostly on the DevEx front, which is usually the non-coding activities. But a large application of AI now, and an efficient one, is really assisting developers in their code. So whether people using Cursor or Copilot, they're just reporting at least 20 or 30% productivity enhancement. So what's your take on using AI to help you code? Is it something that people should start adopting widely, or is it still, in the experimentation phase?
Well, if we're talking about developer experience, my focus is always on identifying friction points and solving that. I mean, if AI is helping developers and they like it, I think you should still give it to developers. Like, I'm not saying let's not give it to them, and coding assistants are not useful. They are very useful, and you should be giving them to your engineers. So that's not in, I'm not disputing that at all. But what I am saying is you can't expect that they're going to have a better developer experience because it's not actually fixing a problem that they have. It can enhance the developer experience, so it can make it better without improving the problems that it's already got, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. And I know you don't like the term developer productivity, and you believe, if you want to elaborate more on, the relationship between DevX and developer productivity, for people to understand your take on this about not being focused on measuring developer productivity, but rather enhance the experience and productivity will follow.
Yeah, I mean, you can't measure developer productivity. Academic researchers have been trying to find a way to measure it for decades now, and basically, you cannot measure a knowledge worker productivity with simple metrics. Now, that's not me; that's academic researchers saying that. Developers are no different; they are knowledge workers. I think one difference with developers is because of the nature of our work and everything being digital, there are a lot of metrics that come out. So people think, oh, okay, we can use these to measure productivity, which is not the case. It's not that I don't like the term developer productivity. It's just that I think it's the wrong term to use. So productivity, the word productivity, the traditional definition is output over a period of time. Now, if you apply that to software development, that means creating more code faster. And that's not what people actually want. More code is not good. You want to solve the problem with an appropriate amount of code. You don't want to just be generating code unnecessarily. That's tech debt. And so I don't think people actually want productivity. What people want is value delivered faster. And to me, value is high quality software delivered fast. And that's not the same as productivity. But I do get that you do have to measure things. And like I said earlier, what you can measure is the friction points. So you don't want to be measuring, come up with some measures and just say, oh, this is our productivity, when it's not accurate. But we talked about build times. You know that long build times will stop developers from being as productive as they can be. So you measure that and you can improve that part of the developer experience, which results in productivity.
Yeah. Well, it totally makes sense, but it's not very easy, to put in practice every time, especially in smaller teams. So I think smaller teams still tend to go for subjective metrics, which are, and the CTO estimates that this task should take, let's say, 2 days of work, and then they will benchmark the performance of the engineer based on this estimation, which might cause some problems sometimes. But I'm pretty convinced that there's no universal way to measure this productivity. What you're saying makes sense, but it's not always doable, especially in smaller teams. Is there any advice for startups or smaller teams uh, to get a grasp of how to measure DevEx and consequently productivity?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any difference personally for startups or all the way to enterprise. The process is the same. Um, really, if you break it down, what I'm saying is don't measure productivity, measure the things that are stopping people from being productive and improve those
Okay.
things. So whether you have 5 engineers or 5,000, as long as you know what it is that's stopping people from being productive, you measure that and you improve that. And then you go back. What's the next thing that's stopping people from being productive? Because there's always new things that are coming up. That's the process of improving productivity. Who cares about measuring productivity? Like measuring productivity is nothing. You want people to be productive. That's the
Yeah.
outcome. Not the outcome shouldn't be the measurement. The outcome is we have productive people. So, um, yeah, I mean, to me, like I said, there's no way to measure productivity. I don't know why people try. If you have productive developers, the other thing is if you ask your developers, they'll tell you they're not productive. It's not like anyone's hiding it. They actually want to be productive as well. It's not like they're just sitting there waiting for someone to make them productive. And so, really, as leaders, our job is to help developers be productive, and that's really what they want to do.
Yeah, and the starting point would be a simple survey or just having a chat with your engineers. What's your friction? Is there any specific questions, any template, any resources
Yeah.
available?
I've spent in a previous company, I spent like 2 weeks meeting with engineering teams and just asking them one question: how can we improve the way that we deliver software here? And when you ask them, they will give you so much feedback you won't even know what to do with it. Like from 2 weeks, I came away with a backlog which was at least 2 years long.
Oh,
Um, and so to me, the process is always start with asking your developers what do they need, what is stopping them from being the best that they can in the company. Then that doesn't scale. Like if you're in a massive company, that's not going to scale. So you then move to a survey. So you identify points of friction by speaking, then you scale that out with a survey to gather more information and baseline how much of a problem is this for our workforce. After that, you have some metrics, you know what you're going to measure. You start improving, you talk to your engineers and say, hey, this is what we heard. This is what we're thinking about doing to improve it. Do you think that this will improve things for you? They might say yes, they might say no. It's a good feedback loop. And then you work on improving it. It's just a cycle. Once you're done with that thing or that group of things that you're trying to improve, you start again, ask them again, what's stopping you from being as productive as you can? It's just an ongoing cycle. And, so many companies have huge amounts of success in Atlassian. That's the way that we do it as well. And we've had huge improvements in developer satisfaction. I think the last stat was we had a 25% improvement in a very short period of time just by running through this process.
wow. So going back to our younger audience, for young software engineers looking to progress in their career, what's your advice for them to them in terms of skills and areas of focus they should be really keen on developing in the next years?
Um, I'm going to talk about values instead of specific skills. Like, if I reflect on my own journey in technology, like things change all the time. So it is hard to predict. But I think, you can learn new languages, you can learn new technology like AI, but there are some fundamental values
Mm.
when as a person who leads engineers that I look for and that I suggest people focus on. And one is uh, the first thing is always be learning and always be improving. Um, the second that you think you know everything, that means you know nothing. And so there's always something more to learn. You need to be open minded and have a learning mindset, and that's really important. It will serve you really well through your career. The second one is everything is about effort, and I believe that in life, not just in work, but it's very strong in work. And I'm not talking about how many hours you work. I'm talking about how much effort you put into something. And something for me, the way that I think about it for myself is no one will ever say that something failed because Andrew didn't try hard enough. No one will ever be able to say that. And anyone who works with me will vouch for that too. And then finally, the third thing is, especially for engineers, is that creating software is a team sport. And if you can't play as a team, you won't have a team. And so it's very hard to create software as a lone ranger. So, you need to be able to play as a team. You need to be able to work well with other people. And it's a commonly overlooked value in engineering.
Yeah, I like this answer. It might not satisfy our young audience who wants, direct answers. What stack should I learn? And my answer is always, yeah. I mean, whatever you do, do it right, and have this learning mindset, which resonates great with what you've said. And so, if we want just to focus on one aspect, which is, DevOps engineering. Uh, what's the best way to become a DevOps engineer? Is it after doing software engineering for a few years and then you shift, or if you want to do it directly, is it more suitable for people who like to build systems but are not particularly fond of coding? What's your take on this career path?
People who want to become DevOps engineers, is that what you mean?
Yes, yes.
It's a very different type of role. And I think it takes like a special type of person to do this role. There's some qualities about the person themselves. So instead of saying DevOps engineer, let's talk about platform teams, because that's where this type of role usually lives. And like I said, you need to be a specific type of person. And some of the things are, you really need to be passionate about helping other people be successful. Now, when you think about the role of a platform team or DevOps engineer or anything like that, it's really about understanding the friction points that product teams are having and helping them overcome that at scale. And so really your success is when you see that your internal customers are successful. And so, that's a very different mindset and a different thing than I'm going to build this software and I'm going to get satisfaction when I ship this to production. The satisfaction has to come from helping other people do that rather than doing it yourself. And like personally, I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed leading that type of team. I found it very rewarding, but I do know that that's not for everyone. A lot of people are builders. They want to build things, and that's where they get their joy, and they should do that. But if you like, if you love the process of building software and you get satisfaction out of enabling other people to do that, then it's such a good role. And I found it very rewarding myself.
Okay. You've scaled the engineering teams from a few dozens to a few hundreds. What's one piece of advice that you would give to CTOs or startup founders who are about to scale their team, and what should they do? What should they don't do?
That's a great question. I'm just going to answer it with check out Atlassian for startups. I don't normally plug things from Atlassian, but Atlassian gives, it's a semi-new thing from Atlassian. We give startups up to 50 free seats on our software for a year. It includes everything you need to get started, from Jira product discovery to Jira to Confluence, Bitbucket, our internal developer platform Compass. And as a startup founder, you need to be a little bit scrappy. You need to look for these things and take the advantage when you get it. So like that's on in terms of tooling and stuff. In terms of engineering, my advice would be start really heavy with values. I spoke earlier about the Atlassian values. And to me, a lot of success comes from the type of culture, the type of behavior that you accept and what you don't accept, the level of standard of engineering that you accept and don't accept. That's really where high performance and success comes from. And all of that is rooted in values. And so I'd say start with a strong set of values that you want to carry yourself with.
Nice. You always go back to values instead of skills, which tells a bit about your personality and how attached you are to values.
It's very important. I mean, for me as a leader, I always talk about my values. I'm very, very upfront and open. I'm an open book from that perspective. And to me, values is what carries you in a long career. Who 10 years ago, 15 years ago, there weren't as many people who are working in AI as there are now. But look now, we have lots of AI engineers. How did they become AI engineers? They had to learn it. They had to learn it quickly. They had to experiment. And so these things are really important in your career. AI won't be the last technological change that happens. So I think if you set yourself up early with these really good values, then it'll carry you in a long career.
And you mentioned those, sort of free or freemium resources by Atlassian regarding the tools. Are there any other, knowledge resources that are available for free courses, academy, anything?
Yeah. I mentioned Atlassian for startups. There's Atlassian University. So this is basically free training and certification on our products. We have team playbooks. So these are like free resources to address some common team challenges. So one that I look at all the time is team health check. So as an example, it's a workshop that you run with your team, just like a retro or a health check on your team to see how we're working, what are areas that we can improve. It really helps open up communication within a team. We have industry reports too. We just released, I think it was earlier this week or end of last week, a AI collaboration report, which is a fantastic read. Definitely jump in and check that one out. We released a state of developer experience report mid-year this year, which was again a really good read. And then obviously I post a lot of stuff on LinkedIn as well. So that's free. You can go and have a look at my LinkedIn posts.
Sure. One last question, Andrew. When we were preparing for the talk, all of our communication was via LinkedIn. And when I said, okay, let's move to email, you said you don't really use email. Uh, what's your favorite way of communicating, and is it something because of your internal how you work internally at Atlassian? Email is very very low priority, and you adapted this in your life, or was it even before Atlassian?
It was before. Like I have a very strong dislike for email. I think it's like the worst communication that we have access to these days. If you think about it, you're pretty much sending somebody a letter. What's the difference between writing a letter and writing an email? They just get it faster.
Mhm.
But you still write, "Dear Andrew, I hope this finds you well, blah, blah, blah." And the person sits right next to you. Like it's such a weird thing. Like they're sending me a letter in my computer and I can see them.
Mm.
So it's definitely a thing in Atlassian. Like we use Slack heavily. We also communicate through our products, like Confluence and Jira and Loom. But even before that, for example, at the Commonwealth Bank, we created some team norms where we basically created a rule within our large team saying we're not going to email each other if it's only people in our team on the
Okay.
email. At the time, we were using Microsoft Teams, so it was either Teams or, and this was before COVID, get up and walk to the person and speak to them if you can see them, because like email it's just a waste of time. Nobody wants to go through 300 emails every day.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, this is a privilege. I think many people envy you for adopting this mindset and adopting it, in real life every day. So, yeah, a good reflex that we all should think of using someday. Um, so I'm just looking at the chat. If there's anyone who has any questions, please drop them in the chat. Uh, let's give it a minute. in case anyone has any questions. Richard, I can see. Okay. Uh, so Mark has a question. Is there a high quality objective metric to judge software developers by? I'm not saying it should be the only metric, but is there any way of quantifying your notion of value delivered faster?
Magic question with no magic answer. Unfortunately, value means different things to different companies, and so like value, the definition of value changes from company to company. But if we're talking about performance of a software team, then I think like I always say that the DORA metrics are great ones to use because that measures quality and throughput, which really we're talking about high quality software fast. That's what we're talking about here. But there's a whole bunch of frameworks that you can use. There's a Space framework. DX have their framework as well, which is good. So there's no shortage of metrics. But personally, I really like using the DORA metrics. And that's at a team level, of course.
Thank you. Richard is asking, what is one piece of advice you'd give someone going from startup to scale up?
Oh, good question. I'm probably not the best person to ask. I've spent most of my time working in enterprises. But like I said, it all comes back down to value, to the values. I always say that, like I said, always be open to learning and improving. And it's all about effort. I've worked in smaller companies as well, not just enterprises, and the effort is consistent. You can only do what you can do. And to me, that's what it's about.
Nick is saying that there's no mention of difficult users and the requirements as a pain point or friction. So, yeah, developers are doing work for users, so they should put up with this. Okay, if no one has any more questions, we'll end it here. Thank you, Andrew. Thanks a lot for this insightful talk. And I hope everyone enjoyed it. And looking forward to our next chat. Thank you, Andrew.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Fadi. Good to talk to you.
Thank you, everyone.